Hey guys, welcome back. This is episode 2 of BBQ with Birk. So today I want to do back to basics. Start with the good old steak on the barbecue. Everyone wants to know how to cook a steak properly on the barbecue. I'm going to show you guys how to prep your steak and how to put it on the barbecue and get yourself cooked perfectly so that way you can always impress everyone that comes over for dinner, or you can just make yourself the perfect steak that you always want and not have to spend a fortune going to a steakhouse for it. So I'm going to start with a chunk of meat here. So we have a strip loin here. I have it a little thicker. I'm going to just cut this guy in half. So what you want to do with your strip loin or with any steak that you have, usually you want to make sure that your steaks are at 1 inch. 1 inch is the standard for when you have cooking times. That way you know an exact thickness as opposed to just a portion size, because you want to know how hot to have and how long to leave on either side. So you have 1 inch as a standard cooking time. So we're just going to cut this guy into our standard 1 inch steak. Perfect. Alrighty, 2 steaks here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to trim off. So what we have here on the top of your strip loin is usually a silver skin. It's a thicker connective tissue part. Now on a roast is fine, because over time, with temperature above 88 degrees Fahrenheit, you're going to be able to cook that down on a roast, and that will turn like butter. Totally fine. On a steak, you're not cooking it for that long. You're only cooking it for anywhere between 10 to 15 minutes, so it's not going to have time to break down. So you want to make sure that that's cut off. If you ever have a steak that has a chewy bit, that's probably what the culprit is. So we're going to just take this and we're going to cut it, trim it off here. Don't want to cut all the meat off, but you want to make sure that you just cut that off. Perfect. And usually you want somewhere around 1/4 inch of fat. Any longer than that, and you find too much fat, it doesn't really render down while you're cooking a steak. On a roast, totally go for 1.5 inch, do whatever makes you happy. But usually all the fat on the outside, a lot of people don't eat, and it's not going to end up cooking into your steak anyway. So 1/4 inch on that guy. It will render into your meat a little bit, giving it some more moisture and some more flavor, but mostly just on a roast, not on a steak. Perfect. So we have a nice strip loin here, trimmed up nice and well, and a second one. Alright, so now that your steak's all trimmed up and ready to go, the next step is seasoning. So a lot of people do a lot of different steak rubs, they worry about barbecue sauces, all sorts of stuff, but a real good steak, all you need to do is simple salt and pepper. So the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you get a salt on it, and don't add the pepper until after the grill. Now I know this seems like a weird thing to do, because most people salt and pepper and then toss it on the grill. But pepper actually, when cooked on the grill, alters the flavor, and it gets a slight bitter flavor. So it's always better to pepper after, and do a little coarse pepper, I prefer. So salt is definitely good. You want to salt each side before you put it on the grill. Nice even coating. And it's good to go. So once we toss it on the grill, we'll flip it, and then we'll pepper the sides after. The other thing too is, before you toss it on the grill, you want to make sure you pull your steaks out of the fridge, probably 20 minutes, half an hour before you know you're going to cook it. Always good to have steak at room temperature. This is because if it is too cold on the inside of your steak, when you go to cook it, it won't be a consistent cook. You're going to have the inside cold and the outside room temperature, so when you cook, the inside is not going to cook properly. Same with if you pull your steaks out of the freezer. Always, always, always make sure your meat is up to room temperature. Alright guys, so next you want to make sure your barbecue is nice and hot. So you want to make sure that it's preheated before you put the steaks on. So while the steaks were getting up to room temperature in the kitchen, I started the barbecue. So you want to make sure that you don't have any hot spots in your barbecue, or you at least know where the hot spots are. Now what a hot spot it is usually in a barbecue, there's going to be one part of it that gets warmer than the others, so you want to either avoid putting your meat on those spots or use them to your advantage. What I like doing is I like setting the grill all on low, get it to a temperature I know, so around 350, kind of what you would normally use in an oven. And then I take one of the burners and I turn it up super hot. The purpose of this is what I'm going to do is I'm going to sear my steaks. I'm going to sear the first side and then turn it real low. And then when I turn it over, I can sear the other side real quick and then put it back on a lower temperature. What this does is this enables me to sear the one side, lock all that moisture in, and make sure that you're not going to lose any of the juice in your steak and you're not going to dry your steak out, but you also don't want to cook on a super high heat. So putting this burner up to high, we've already got our other vegetables and stuff started on the grill. The steak's probably the last thing you want to put on. Usually if you're cooking a rare steak, you're doing about 5 minutes one side, 3 minutes the other. Medium rare, you're going to do about 5 minutes one side, 4 minutes the other, and then 6 minutes one side, 4 minutes the other. And if you're going to totally burn the crap out of your steak, you're doing about 8 minutes one side, 6 minutes the other. Perfect. So we got our grill nice and hot. We're going to sear the one side, and then we're going to just let it go for about 5 minutes. Then I'm going to turn it over, and I'm going to do about 3 minutes on the other side on a medium heat. I don't want to overcook this. Now the key is you cook your steak just under what you want, pull it off and let it rest. Usually you want to let it rest about 3 to 5 minutes depending how long it cooks for. This is because after you pull it off the grill, it's going to still cook internally, and you don't want to overcook that steak that you just spent that time making perfect. All right, let's get these on the grill and listen for a good sizzle. Beautiful. Seared it nice, and we're going to turn it down to about a medium heat. Now, it's very important when you're doing your steak, you don't want to flip it multiple times and you don't want to cut into it. The reason behind this is because the more times you flip a steak, the tougher it's going to get. You're constantly cooking each side back and forth and back and forth. That's going to make your steak really tough, and you're not going to get a nice chew through it and a tender steak. The other reason that you don't want to make sure that you constantly cut into it or open and close the grill is because now you're altering the cooking time every time you do that. It's constantly opening and closing the grill, you're changing the internal temperature of your grill, and constantly cutting your steak. Now you're opening new edges. So if you cut your steak open to check to see if it's finished, that's going to cook quicker, because you're always cooking quicker along the edges as opposed to the interior of your steak. The more edges, the faster they cook, and so forth. So we want to try and leave our steaks alone as often as possible. Put it in, sear it, turn it down, leave it. Count those 5 minutes, open it up, flip it over, leave it. Pull it off when you're ready. You don't want to constantly check on your steak, peek in on it, cut it, poke into it. All you're doing is you're ruining the integrity of that steak. Let it cook and trust it. You'll have a good steak. So when you're cooking a steak, it's important to know the internal temperatures. You're not going to meat thermometer every single piece unless you work in a restaurant. But when it comes to knowing your rareness of your meat between steaks and roasts, it's important to get close to it. So when you're looking at a rare steak, you're going to do between 120 and 130 degrees Fahrenheit. Medium rare between 130, 135, and then 135 to 145 for medium. And well done, you're going to do around 145 to 155 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, it's always important when you pull your meat off, you want to undercook by about 5 degrees Fahrenheit. The reason being because when you do pull your steak or your roast off the grill, it's still cooking. It's still hot from that grill. It's going to keep that internal temperature, and you don't want it to overcook. So always pull it off a little earlier, set it on a plate or set it on your cutting board, either in tin foil or by itself, and let it rest. For steaks, about 3 to 5 minutes. For roast, even up to 10 minutes. You want to let this happen because if you cut it right away, you're going to lose all those important juices, and you're also going to end up with a steak that's slightly undercooked. And nobody wants to serve a roast at Thanksgiving undercooked, and nobody wants to have a steak ruin a date night. All right, guys, the other important thing to remember is you might like your steak a certain way, but if you're cooking dinner for somebody else or you're cooking for a large barbecue, you want to make sure that you know how many steaks you're cooking at what temperature and time. So usually I like my steak a little rare, but if somebody likes a medium rare or even medium, then you're going to need to make sure you put those steaks on before. Last thing you want to do is have somebody waiting around for a steak while you're enjoying your delicious meat. So it's been about 5 minutes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open the grill, I'm going to flip it over and count for another 3 or 4. Now again, remember guys that we usually don't pepper any of the meat beforehand because it gives it a bitter flavor. Now once it's flipped and ready to go, you can put a little bit of pepper on top. I like to do a nice coarse pepper. You can do fine if you want, but I find you get a nice flavor profile out of that. And make sure my veggies season nice and well as well. Perfect, we're gonna pop that down and we're gonna let that go for another 3 or 4 minutes. Medium heat, keep it consistent. All right guys, time to test those steaks. All right, these guys are looking beautiful. So we're gonna pull them off, put them on the plate, and let them rest for about 3 to 5 minutes. Then we'll slice it open and see what we got. Alrighty, we're gonna slice into this guy. Beautiful. Excellent. These are all done, ready to go. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and happy grilling.